In the discussion, 90%, 60%, 80%, there's some very high numbers being discussed at the moment in terms of cutting greenhouse gas emissions. We talked about efficiency, renewables, CCS, nuclear. In your opinion, what kind of role can wind really play by 2050? What kind of percentage could you really, realistically, counting onshore and offshore, get to?
You're talking about an electricity production percentage. So that would be 50% for wind energy, counting both onshore and offshore. We're looking at a 100% renewable system, so you lose all the rest. You make use of the solar in the south, but also, like I said during the debate, in countries that have less sun, so like Germany. Today Germany is the first solar country. And you use a lot of wind across all of Europe. You develop a supergrid across the North Sea, and you develop interconnectors between countries so that you can exchange power from where it's being produced to where it's being consumed, but also where it's being more produced at 1 minute to where it's being more consumed at that very minute. So basically you build a better interconnected grid so that you can have less balancing issues, and that's less balancing costs as well, and that you can just shift around and play with the complementarities. For example, wind energy the wind is not blowing during the winter and during the night. The sun is shining more during the day and during the summer. So that's a very good complementarity there. So you use these two as like 50% wind, let's say 30% solar around PV and CSP, concentrated solar. You use about 14% hydro to even things out. You would do a lot of as well demand management. So you could, if you look at an electrified transport system, for example, you could use car batteries to smooth out the peaks. So when you have too much of a peak, you will use batteries to actually generate electricity. And when you have a low, then you can charge a lot more your cars. And then have a bit of zero thermal, have a bit of wave and marine. So this whole system linked together with a good grid, and yeah, we're looking at 100% renewables.
The emissions trading scheme did get mentioned today. What's your organisation's perspective on it? What kind of reforms would you like to see?
A lot. We were very happy when the emission trading system got designed, because it was the first time that finally the external costs of energy production, so climate change, but also SOx, NOx, PM10s, which are carcinogenic particles, all of this gets finally priced. So the price of carbon is extremely important, because when you build a wind farm, it's going to cost you, at the moment, still a bit more than if you build a coal plant in Europe. But what you're not paying is the price of climate change. And what the coal plant is not paying at the moment is the cost of what they're generating. So the ETS was a great success from that perspective, and 100% auctioning was great. But the crisis came along, and throughout, from the mid of 28, you've seen that the crisis has lowered the output of the industrial sectors and also a bit of the electrical sectors. And what this means is that you've created a depression in the price of carbon. The industry sectors like steel or cement are oversupplied. It's not that they've been over-allocated, they've been fine allocated, but through lowering their output, they are now oversupplied. So what they're doing is they're selling their surplus credit to the power sector. Power sector is like, well, that's great. I don't need to actually change my ways of doing things. So I can just continue to do coal and just buy cheap allowances on the market. And who pays for that? Consumers, because we still have a price of carbon, so somebody has to pay. So basically, at the moment, the consumer is paying for a price of carbon that is not helping to change things, neither in the heavy industry nor in the power system. So what we want to see is a set aside. I mean, ideally, we would want to see a move to a 30% target by 2020. At the moment, politically, it's tricky. So the minimum that we need to do is, like even Shell said, we need to do the set aside, and we need to do that so that the ETS gets fixed, basically. So that's what we want to see.